As we get closer to Christmas, I'm reminded again just how risky relationships are. Relationships are risky. It's one thing to do difficult things, try to wade through the COVID regulations, put IKEA furniture together, politics, but try living with another human being. It's pretty difficult and it's pretty risky. I'm not saying I'm great at it. I've been practicing. I've been working at it. With my wife, with my kids. Sometimes I get it right. Sometimes I don't. Actually, sometimes I value being right over being right in the relationship. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes I dig my heels in. And that's just one way that relationships are risky and they are tough. They're tough to navigate. But they are also one of the things that matters the most in life. Relationships matter so much. Today, as we continue through Advent, we're on the fourth Sunday of Advent, if you can believe that. And I want to tell you that love matters most. I've been to a lot of funerals. I've done a lot of funerals. And I'll tell you something that I don't really see. I don't really see people near the end of their life saying, I wish I could have made more money. I don't actually see people saying, you know what? I wish I could have won more arguments. Darn it. I wish I could have been right most of the time because that's the most important thing to me. What I see is people kind of coming to their senses, this sense of sanity, where they see things more clearly and realize that actually relationships matter most. Love matters most. Today we're looking at the Christmas story. And I want to tell you that there was some real risk in this Christmas story. Sometimes we can read it like it's this safe, glossy, Hallmark card sort of thing. But there was some real risk. And today, I want to convince you that that real risk was done because love matters most. And there was real risk involved in God sending himself in what we call the incarnation as the baby Jesus. So let's backtrack a bit. So far, this is where we're at. Last week, we talked about the relationship between faith, hope, and joy. That how if you have faith and you take hopeful actions, you will experience joy in your life. That's what we saw with the wise men, the magi, these pagan men that were the first to worship baby Jesus. Didn't have everything right. They didn't have all of their theology right, yet they had that right. And they responded in great joy. But I want you to notice that the Christmas story is full of risk. It is not a safe story. It is a dangerous story. It is a risky story. And there's lots there that we need to pay attention to. And I want to convince you of that today. So I want to tell you the real version of the story that we sometimes forget about. After the Magi left, Joseph and Mary were exhausted. Kind of like, when you're really tired and you have company come over and you want to see them, but you don't. Not that I've ever felt that way. Certainly not when you have dropped over. But they were exhausted and they had company and they were happy to have that company, but they just wanted to go to bed. They were so tired. Let me give you some perspective. They traveled from their hometown in Nazareth to Bethlehem. You know how far that was? 145 kilometers. No, that took them 4 days, going 32 kilometers a day in their car. And they went really slow because gas was expensive back then. But no, they probably walked. I know we like to think that Mary was on a donkey. There's nowhere in the Bible that says that. But even so, how many of you want to spend 4 days on a donkey when you're pregnant? Come on. Anyone here? Troy? No, we don't want to spend 4 days on a donkey when we're pregnant. It's terrible riding a donkey and walking. I don't know if that's better or worse. You tell me, is it worse or better than riding a donkey for 4 days when you're pregnant? Anyone have an opinion? I think it could be worse, but that's just me. What would I know? So they make it all the way there to Bethlehem. And she's pregnant, and she has this baby. Well, I've been part of having 3 children. And I know they don't just pop out. I know that it's not an easy thing. And I don't read in the story anything about a midwife or a doctor. I don't see anything about painkillers or epidurals. So Mary has this baby, and I don't know, but I just got to think that maybe Joseph had to fill in for the doctor. Joseph filling in for the doctor? I don't think he knew what he was doing. And as you know, births can be complicated, right? The baby could be breech. There could be like umbilical cord issues. There could be all sorts of things that happen, bleeding, complications in delivery. This was not easy. And poor Joseph probably had to cut that cord. You know, they asked me if I want to do that, and I was like, no, thank you. Joseph had to do that. He had to cut the cord. And lots could have gone wrong. It was risky. And they are utterly exhausted. They're tired. They just want to go to sleep. So we're going to pick up today right after the Magi left in Matthew 2, verses 12 to 15. And this is what it says. After the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream. Get up, flee to Egypt with the child and his mother. The angel said, stay there until I tell you to return, because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. That night, Joseph left for Egypt with the child and Mary, his mother. And they stayed there until Herod's death. This fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophet. I called my son out of Egypt. So Joseph's really tired. And he's just nodded off. And he has this dream, a dream of an angel. And the angel says, get up and flee. That's pretty powerful language, the word flee. Like, we don't really use that, do we? Flee from here. I mean, it reminds me of the Lord of the Rings, right? Fly, you fools. You know that scene? The best scene in a movie ever. Fly, you fools. Get out of Bethlehem. There is great peril and risk here. What would you do? I mean, if I woke up, I don't think people have dreams of angels telling them to flee. Kevin, wake up, flee with your family right now to Idaho. You've got to go. Right now. I mean, if I woke up, I'd be like, what did I eat? I had something strange for dinner, but, you know, I think I'll probably discern this. Maybe tomorrow morning I'll call the elders, and maybe we'll have a meeting, and we'll figure this out. That wasn't really an option for Joseph. And he must have had his doubts, I don't know, but as we know the story, he woke Mary up, took baby Jesus, and they left for Egypt. They were there for 4 years. This is real risk. And I think we need to really pay attention that this is not a Hallmark story. This is a story full of peril and risk. They're told to flee for their lives. And the reason I think this is important is we need to realize that God took a real risk in loving us. There was a real risk to Jesus in the incarnation. It wasn't fabricated. It wasn't fake. It wasn't designed to test our faith. It wasn't designed to just kind of confuse us and make it look like this. It wasn't like a divine chessboard where God was moving all the pieces and nothing could have happened. What if Joseph stayed in bed? I don't know if I would have made a good Joseph. I would have stayed in bed and I would have not delivered that baby. Maybe I would have. I'm not that bad. I would have. I love delivering babies. One of my favorite things to do. You know, we think of this ideal picture. You know, the Christmas carol, baby Jesus, no crying he made, away in a manger. It's this picture that really deceives us about the reality of the risk that God took in the incarnation and sending himself for us. He took a risk. It was possible that it would not work out. And he took that risk because relationships matter. He was risking in relationship. He was risking out of love. This was risky love. I want to tell you another Christmas story from a parallel universe. It's really cool. It's a parallel universe Christmas story. Gives us a glimpse of another realm of Christmas in a parallel universe. You guys all know about multiverses, right? That's what I'm talking about, the multiverse. This is a different universe. And we see it in Revelation chapter 12, verses 1 to 4. This is the story of Jesus' birth and Herod on a cosmic scale in a different universe, maybe even more real than we see in the story in Matthew. This is what it says. Then I witnessed in heaven an event of great significance. I saw a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon beneath her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant, and she cried out because of her labor pains and the agony of giving birth. Then I witnessed in heaven another significant event. I saw a large red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, with 7 crowns on his heads. His tail swept away 1/3 of the stars in the sky, and he threw them to the earth. Now listen to this. He stood in front of the woman as she was about to give birth, ready to devour her baby as soon as it was born. This is a parallel story to the story we have of that manger scene. It's a deeper reality. It's happening on the spiritual realm. It's a cosmic realm. And there's a lot to this. I'm not going to go into all of this today, but Mary is there, Herod is there, the baby is there, and there was significant peril and risk involved. God took a risk in sending his son. It was a real risk. You know, God also took a risk in loving us. He took a real risk in relationship for us. I think the thing that we learn from the Christmas story and from Scripture is that you are worth the risk. Let that sink in. You are worth the risk. Loving you is worth the risk. You know, we have this scripture, John 3:16, that I'm sure all of you probably know if I say it. For God so loved the world, he sent his only begotten Son, that whoever would believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. I think we sanitize that story too, like the Christmas story, because we read it as this gushy thing. Oh, he felt so good about us, which he did. But the point of this verse is that he demonstrated his love. It was love in action by what he did. He took a risk by sending his son for us. That's how much he loved us. It went beyond just feelings to action that was risky. He demonstrated his real risk and real love. And it's like this. He surrendered to that risk. It's interesting that the Magi came and worshiped Jesus as the King of the Jews. It was a Gentile term, and it's used at the beginning of Matthew, but it's also used at the end of Matthew, on the cross, the King of the Jews. See, it comes full circle, and we see the risk that was involved and the peril, and Jesus surrendered to that risk. And I know he was hurt, felt alone, and betrayed, and suffered. This is risk demonstrated. This is real risk. I guess we are loved that much. You are loved that much. He took the first step and reached out, took that risk. and he's waiting for our hands, I suppose. It reminds me of my marriage proposal to Cindy. It was really risky. I mean, I asked her to marry me, and I can't believe she said yes. It's been risky ever since. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, she made the right decision. Clearly, she made the right decision. It's a real risk. Relationships are risky, aren't they? You take a step and you reach out in love. And the Christmas story is about risky love. You know, I think we also learn that loving others is worth the risk. There's a thing for us in the Christmas story too, of reaching out this Christmas. Loving others is worth the risk. And we're to love like this. And loving means valuing people. It means valuing people over our money and possessions. I find it easy to say I value people over those things, but it's tested by my generosity. How generous are we being? Do we value people over money? Do you value people over your leisure time? We love our leisure time. I mean, Netflix, come on. How good does it get? You value people over Netflix? What about comfort? We are a people who love our comfort. We're to value people over comfort. What about over being right? Do relationships matter more than being right? Or do we need to be right so certainly that we destroy relationships and walk away from them because we need to be right? Loving others means valuing them over being right. Love means sticking with people when you don't want to. I think a lot of us do a good job of that. Love means hanging on when it's difficult. Walking with people through difficult times. Maybe just being present with them. And it's more than a feeling. It's actions. It's demonstrated by how we live with people. And love means risking. It means being vulnerable. And when I'm talking about being vulnerable, I don't mean you get on the bus and tell the stranger your life story and just gush. That's just being weird. Being vulnerable means that you take a risk in being kind with someone when that kindness might be rejected. Being vulnerable means telling someone how you feel when they might not respond with that feeling, kind of like a marriage proposal, right? I love you. Will you marry me? No. That's vulnerability. And it takes bravery and it takes courage. And I think what we learn from this today is that love matters most. It is the most important thing. God took a risk. And all through his ministry, even in Matthew, if we continue in the book of Matthew, Matthew 22, verses 37 to 40, known as the Shema, we see that Jesus again says that love matters the most above all things. What's the greatest commandment? He says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. And the second is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and prophets hang on these two things. In other words, everything is submitted to that law of love. Everything. Love matters most. The Apostle Paul picks this up too. And this is the author of the book of Romans, that heavy theology book, right? That's tough to read. It's like IKEA stuff. Reading Romans is tough. This is the guy that loves theology, digs deep into theology. He's a smart guy. But this guy risked everything in his life because of his love for Jesus and his people. And this is what he says about love. It's a familiar verse. You'll know it. 1 Corinthians 13, 1-3. If I speak in the tongues of men or angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal. if I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship, that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Love matters most. Relationships matter most with God and with others. This Christmas, I want you to know that you are loved, and you're loved so much that God took a risk in loving you. It was risky love. It could have gone sideways. You were loved that much. What matters most to him was relationship with you and me, with us. That matters most. So with your family, with your friends, with neighbors, with strangers, love like that. Take a risk. As they say in mountain biking and other things that makes me feel kind of young, send it. You guys are too old. You don't know. Send it. Send that love. Carly's too old too. Act on it. Put it into action because love matters most. I'd like to call the team up now and just want you to know that God took a risk because he loved you and he loves us. And this Christmas, let us go out and take that risk, accept that love, and live that love. Amen.